I start the questions.
You're on.
You're? Hey, I'm Ivy Claire, and I'm here with Kobe Bryant to talk about our first collaboration,
Yes.
Epoca, the Tree of Ecrof, which is going to be on sale November 12th. And I'm so excited about this book. But I have to say, you've done 3 books, but this is the first one you started working on.
Yes.
And I remember getting a call out of the blue from you, and you started telling me this insane idea about this sports fantasy world that you'd created. And you asked me to come down, and I came down here. I couldn't really believe this was happening because, as a former professional athlete myself, no one ever talks about sports and athletics at the same time. I mean, sports and writing. Yeah. And you told me that one of the reasons you started this project was your last year playing basketball, you'd become completely obsessed with this idea of this fantasy sports world. Yeah. And it was completely consuming you. And I was fascinated by that.
Yeah, it was like during training camp. We had training camp our last year in Hawaii. So I'm in the hotel, and I have to, I'm injured all over the place. So I'm icing everything. I have my feet in the ice bucket, ice bag on my knees, ice bag on my shoulder. So I obviously can't really walk around much.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the room, and I'm just thinking. I know I wanted to tell stories. I'm trying to think of the story to tell. And then I started thinking about the Greek gods, and then sports, and then all this other stuff. And then that's when the idea started coming piece by piece. I just started writing pages and pages and pages and pages of notes. And it went on all season long. I mean, it was...
Yeah, I mean, you had a pretty complex idea when we first started talking about it. I'm sort of glad that you branched out to other books, because I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this in one story.
I remember when we sat down for the first time. And I sat down, I kind of threw you the idea and stuff, and you started shooting out questions and stuff. And I was like, honestly, I don't know. I ain't thought about that yet. Well, what about this? I don't know. But what do you think of the foundation of the idea?
Yeah.
Can we then? And we started kind of thinking of different things, different stories, and we came up with this story. Like you said, this is the first story that we started working on.
Right.
About 3 years.
It's been 3 years, and it went through a lot of changes. I think one of the things we agreed upon from the start that it was going to have some grounding in classics, and because you grew up in Italy, and I studied classics in college, and we thought that was definitely something that was going to be one of the big linchpins of this book, right?
Yeah, it was very, very important, and by the way, it was nearly impossible to try to find a writer that was an athlete and studied the classics. And that was my bar. And I was like, all right, there's one out there. I know there's one out there. So when I found you, I was like, oh, yes, yes. Yeah, so it's very important.
Well, it's so funny because people always ask me, are you going to write about sports? And I always thought I wouldn't do that and then I needed to find the perfect avenue to do it. And then to tie classics into it, it was sort of a dream come true. Yeah. But people, I used to play professional squash, and, I was always writing on the side, and all the other athletes would be like, what are you writing, email? I was like, no, I'm writing a book. Yeah. And I think people find it really surprising that athletes can be creative. But
there's such a creative element to being an athlete, whether it's creative with a certain shot or, creative with game strategy and tactics. There's a certain creative element to it. Even in your training process, your training regimen, you have to think outside the box sometimes. There's a lot of creativity involved. But sports itself is just inherently emotional, right? It's very emotional. And so when you look at that, what is the magic that we can connect to that? And then the bigger thing is that sports inspires people.
Yeah.
Inspiration is magical.
Right.
So if we can take emotion, inspiration, connect those together, and build a sports world that's centered on that, it'll be all right.
Yeah, I think so much of there's this magical element in this called grana, which is we sort of identify everyone has their own sense of grana, which is sort of, you identify it as something emotional. Yeah. And I think it's more of a talent that you can't put your finger on that's unique to each individual, which is sort of the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so in our world that we created, and it's also in all the other books in different versions, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So grana is sort of the thing that allows each individual to excel in whatever field he or she is chosen for or chooses, right?
That's right. And the idea for grana came when I was, my daughter asked me to teach her to play basketball. So I went out back and on the basketball and teach her how to shoot. Yeah. And there's these exercises that you do, you learn how to shoot, you start in front of the basket, literally right under it. Yeah. You have to make 3 in a row, step back, 3 in a row, step back, make 3 in a row until you get to the free throw line. And at any point you miss, you have to start all
back.
over, right?
I do the same thing in squash.
It's insane. You know, how maddening does the
Yeah.
drill get? It gets maddening, right? So she was doing it, and she missed it, and she kept getting frustrated.
Yeah.
And I was trying to explain to her, like, okay, it's okay. You don't have to be frustrated by it, but there's no talking her down.
Yeah.
She's already there. I'm like, man. So then I thought of the visual, well, if she could see that when she gets frustrated or gets discouraged, the basket shrinks.
Right.
And then when she's able to calm down and find her neutral state, the basket goes to its own size. And if you practice more,
Right.
and you're able to stay in a neutral state, now the basket will actually grow in size. It's like, that's Ghana, that's magic, that's what we need.
It's like controlling your emotional state. But also it's that thing, I also see it like, you know, if you train with, you probably don't see this quite the same way because you are this person, but when you're so good at something and you can't explain how to do it because it's just like, you know, what
natural.
you can do. Like I work with a coach and she'd be like, yeah, just hit it this way. Like, but wait, no, I don't quite get that. You know,
Yeah.
like what did you do? Like, so it's both being able to control that emotional state, but also sort of identifying this thing that's not, you know, explicable to everybody.
Yeah,
Like
tactically, how do you teach someone to be better at something?
Right.
Like, you have to go back to the basics and like peel back the layers of the onion and remember like where you first started, how were you taught, like literally piece by piece.
Right.
It's hard.
so
We have some questions. We have a lot of people tuning in.
Well,
I
I'm literally
apologize
sitting
for
here, like, just
interrupting.
talking all the time.
it's a fun book and there's adventure in it too. It's not just like how to get
So Laura is asking, what makes Epoca different from the other books?
You want to take that one?
Sure. Okay, so Epoca is definitely much more of a developed fantasy world, I'd say. You know, it has a little more of an adventure element. I don't want to compare it to other books out there, but it has
All right,
sort of...
I'll speak on it then.
Okay, you can do
Yeah.
it.
So Epoca, you know, you start seeing the world flesh out a little bit more, right? So in the legacy story and in the Wizardar story, you really don't understand much about the gods. Praying to the gods is banned in Dren, and so is just having grana. It's illegal. You can't have it. In legacy story, you see a little bit of it. You see a few of the gods, but in this story, you start opening up a little bit more. You start expanding a little bit more. You start understanding that there's something much, much bigger at stake. And eventually you'll see how they all kind of connect together. But this is the story where we really kind of open it up a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely a fantasy adventure.
Yeah.
You know, this sort of, we were talking, we were writing, we're like the Goonies and, you know,
Yes.
all this stuff. We want them to go on a quest and we want them to save the world through sports magic, which is one of the most fun and frustrating things to figure out. Like, I think sports can save the world, but like trying to find an application for how they use their sports talent to like save this academy was really tricky and super fun.
It's
Yeah.
super hard because, like, you look at Nelson Mandela and what he did with rugby, for example, and how he used that to unify people.
Right.
You're like, okay, that's beautiful. Sports can change the world, but that doesn't really help us
No.
in trying to tell an adventure story. Like, how do we use that example, that inspiration,
Yeah.
and try to kind of bottle it up in a
But we
in a novel?
did.
But we did. We did it.
And we have a lot of people writing in that they're buying the book for their children and their grandchildren.
Okay,
So,
awesome.
That's good. That's great.
It's a great book for, you know, it's funny, it's a book that we wrote for anyone, you know, from 8 to 14 to read, but I do think, you know, my parents read it, and they're tough critics, and they really got a lot out of it. I think this book reads up really well. I think it's really a great book for people, you know.
Well, that's in your writing, though.
Oh.
Because
Thank you.
it is, because like you can take a message and you can skew it however way you want to, but I think the beauty about this book is that you've been able to hit that ball right down the middle of the fairway in the sense of it's a family, something
Yeah.
a family can enjoy, which is right, because you can write a book for a kid or you can write a book for an adult, but you have to write something for the family to enjoy, and you've been able to do that. So.
Well, thanks.
I don't know how, because like you sit down, we like outline the story, and we have all these notes, and I'm throwing crazy stuff out there, which I don't know how you kept track of.
You know, I have to say, sometimes you throw the craziest thing out there, and I'd go to bed and be like, oh my gosh, how am I going to fix this? And the first thing in the morning, I'd get a phone call, and you'd fix it. I was like, oh great, I'm not going to kill him today.
There's the random, I swear, I don't know how, because like I would text you randomly
Yeah.
and say, all right, I have this idea, and then it would be like a long one. It's like, here's the backstory of the parents, and here's da-da-da-da-da.
Oh,
I don't know how in the world you dealt with that. So.
But you always, like, sometimes you get notes from people on projects and they'll tell you what to do and then they'll say, go fix it. But you always came back the next day with, okay, now I've figured out how to integrate this crazy thing I threw at you at midnight.
So Jennifer's asking, Kobe, will you ever put yourself in one of the books as a character?
I'm kind of naturally in the books. You know, it's hard to disassociate and when you come up with an idea or a character or the journey of the character. It's hard to really fully remove yourself from it because you tend to write or create from places that are familiar. So there are pieces of me in all of us. I'm sure there are pieces of you.
Well, especially in this book, because this book, in the world of Epoca, there are two factions, the dreamers and the realists, and they're two competing houses, the two competing philosophies of how to approach sports and life and, you know, everything. And initially, we both thought we were dreamers, but I think we both, for being sort of, have come to terms with the dreamers and realists. And, you know, that is, you know, you and sort of me at the same time. Like, the two houses represent both sides of our personalities. So you definitely are there.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. I mean, it's, but that philosophically, though, it's a really great question of, are you a dreamer or are you a realist? And, like, on the surface, you would think, okay, being a dreamer is good, being a realist is bad, but that's not what we're saying.
No.
Right? There's just two different philosophies of how to live life. And I remember sitting down with you and we were kind of talking about it at the beginning, trying to figure out the best way to explain it. Like, what is the difference between a dreamer and a... Well, a dreamer is going to try to pursue that dream no matter what.
Right.
Like, you're going to go, you know, Walt Disney building Disney. He's going broke, he's still going, going. Whereas a realist at some point is going to have perspective. Right? So you say, you know what? Probably isn't the most responsible thing to continue investing, to continue to build, you know, Snow White when we have no money, you know? And I think that's the biggest difference, is that there are certain elements of responsibility and perspective that a realist has that a dreamer doesn't necessarily have. And it's not good or bad, it's just different.
And these are kids who are just coming to terms with these kind of things. They're having fun and just trying to figure out what these identities mean, you know, and, you know, one of them has both parts to her personality. So our main character, Prisha, is both. She's the only half dreamer, half realist in all of Epoca.
That is correct. Yeah.
So she's got some challenges.
Oh. Do your kids view you as a superhero?
Me? No.
Dad?
No way. You kidding? Not a chance. No. Not even a smidge of it. Not even a smidge of it. In fact, my little girl, she Bianca, who will be 3 in December, I was giving her a shower, and we have a little hoop that you stick on the wall. Right? And so she has little rubber balls and stuff. And she just like shoots and stuff, and she dunks, and she's like, buckets. I'm like, yeah, you got a bucket. And she shoots, and she's like Gigi. And I was like, yeah, you know, I can play basketball too, but she doesn't know that. She just knows her sister, and her sister plays basketball, you know? So she's like, I shoot like Gigi, and I was like, yes, you do.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
So, yeah, no, I'm not, no, nothing.
What role have your daughters played in creating the books?
Major part in it, actually, and just talking to them a little bit about character, even about names. And a lot of it is observing them and listening to them talk about sport and some of the challenges that they face. Trying to put those in a story so that, you know, I feel like if they could learn from them individually, then there'll be other kids out there that will naturally connect to
But
them.
also specifically in creating some of the characters in this book, we want, and in other books, I'm assuming, we wanted kids who look like your daughters, who were like, you know, different, you know, who didn't, not all white kid athletes out there. And that was a big, you know, this world is super diverse, you know, it's people of all shapes and sizes. So that was a really big factor in it.
Huge.
That's a big deal for this series.
Will Kobe sign the books on this video?
Yes, I will. Yes, we both will, actually. Kind of get started signing that.
And also, as you're signing it, let's just talk about how awesome this book looks. I mean, I just say, Kobe, you are as committed to the look of this book. I wish you guys could touch it. It's just like heavy and beautiful. And look at the colored pages. The colors of the pages reflect Prisha's emotional journey. The colors are her shifting grana and personality and emotions as she's coming to terms with who she is and all this stuff. I have to say, I took these books to a book fair recently, and a man hugged me. He was like, "This is the most beautiful book I've ever seen."
That's awesome. And we you know, we pick it. Because if you think about it as a writer, you spend so much time crafting each word, right? And so it's important for us as we design the book to have the same level of care.
It feels great, by the
Extremely
way,
important.
to like have your words so beautifully presented. It's really a big deal.
Oh, and by the way, if you look at the barcode on the back of the book, I mean, that's like 2 weeks just to design the barcode. Because you can't design a book like this and then just slap a barcode on it. You know what I mean? The barcode has to be a part of the world itself. Like, it has to, like, come from the world.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, thanks. So they're going to be further adventures of Prisha, right?
A lot more. You're going to be busy. You're going to be pretty busy. Well, we're working on book 2 now.
We are.
Working on book 2 now, and then don't want to give out too many spoilers, but there's several more to come after that.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of cool things, lots of sports books are just a traditional journey of like, you know, struggle to winning the match or whatever, have the big Cinderella story victory or, you know. But in these, there are so many levels because there's the book is told from 2 perspectives, Prisha and Rovi. And Rovi is a sort of an orphan, and he lives on the streets, and he's also taken to the academy. And so they have so it's a personal journey as well as an athletic journey, which I think is, you know, as interesting as the sports part.
Yeah, and being able to connect the journey of the personal growth of characters in the story, but connect that to the sport itself.
Yeah.
Right, how they learn about themselves through the sport and through an adventure that's kind of lurking over.
And all this fun stuff, like, you know, buildings that rise and fall and magical trees. I mean, it's a total trip.
Yeah, it's taking like emotional magic and then manifesting that in everything.
Yeah.
Right, in the forest and the nature and the water and the buildings and how they shift and how they move and all sorts of stuff. It's a fun, emotional, magical journey.
Would you ever consider making the books into TV adaptations? Some of my favorite shows used to be books.
100%. Yeah. 100%. We were just talking about this actually because, you know, as we were sitting here building the studio, that is our goal, is every book that we create to then take into another form of media. So film, TV shows, animation, things like that. So we're hard at work right now to figure out how to do that, but it's coming.
Yeah, it'll happen. For sure.
It's coming.
You make everything happen. It's like when we first started this project, I was like, is this ever going to really be a book? Because there's so many ideas. Now it's not just a book, it's an amazing book. And all these, I was like, I have no doubt that that'll happen and more things that you can't even imagine.
Well, we just keep working. You know, the idea is just to create things that are going to help the next generation be better.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just try to and give them high level stuff.
Yeah.
You know, not dumb down anything for our kids. Just give them high level stuff and let them enjoy it.
Sure.
Do you read the books with your kids?
My kids have already read them. So, like
they read them on their own.
Yeah, they read them on their own. And they actually, so the Wizard Art series was a school project for them, and so she kind of had an unfair advantage because you got to like try to think through what was being said about the book and all this other stuff. I'm like, you can just kind of ask me, so it's kind of, you know what I mean? It's not.
Yeah,
really,
but it's also like sometimes like what you see in the book isn't what the author intended too. Like that's the cool thing, is sort of open to interpretation.
Yeah, I wouldn't give her straight answers anyway.
Okay.
I would kind of like let her, you know, try to figure it out. But they've read them. They've read them.
So Emily says, because you were such a great artist on the court, was it easy to transition into this new form of art to express yourself?
I wouldn't say it was easy. I mean, it was easy in the sense of creating, because I've been writing and creating since like 15.
You're a good writer.
Thank you. Been doing it for a while. My English teacher would be happy to hear you say that. She would be really happy to hear you say that. And so it hasn't been easy because you got to build from the ground up. Because there's certain things like the design of the book, like certain things that we want to do, that I want to do, that are very detail oriented, that if you're part of a publishing house, you don't get a chance to do. Mm-hmm. So that means we have to build our own publishing house, and so we can do the things creatively that I feel are very, very important.
So we have a comment. Super impressed that equity and inclusion was considered when writing this book. Having characters and narratives around people that look like your daughter or me is of paramount importance.
And I think there's going to be lots of people who are going to feel the same way. Like, we have people, I think even more so in the new one that's going to come out. Well, there are a few in this one. You know, people of different religions are represented. I think we have someone competing in hijab.
Yes.
You know, it's just sort of the inclusivity of sport is super important.
Because there are athletes everywhere.
Yeah.
And so it's important to represent them and not just shine a light on one group. Like, we got to be able to expand things and open ideas up. And yeah, book 2, we do that a lot more.
Totally. And you know what, another thing that we haven't never talked about in this book is, I always think it's kind of funny. In the book, women or girls compete with boys, and there's no inequality there. So they don't have, you know, the boys' competition of track and the girls' competition of track. They're both competing, and so we don't create like a gender preference, and you know, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, my kids love it. I mean,
girls beat boys.
Yeah, they're the first ones in line. I mean, we've beaten quite a few boys' basketball teams.
Yeah.
So someone's asking about the one person who gets a video message. So one lucky purchaser. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I guess.
They're actually asking what you're going to say in the video message. But
what am I going to say in the video message? I'm not quite sure yet, but I'll say something that I have not pre-thought, so you know it's natural.
And you have a lot of people tuning in from all over, from Salt Lake City, Ohio, all over the place, and they're all asking if you're coming to their cities. So this is, you want to talk about your tour?
Well,
I mean, we're going. I mean, listen. What we're trying to do is communicate, talk about the book as much as we possibly can. We'll do some stuff like that and get out a little bit.
Right now, we're doing a bunch in New York, around here, and I think as it starts going, more things will be added.
Yep.
So that's pretty awesome. I think we're.
I have a question.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. Because where do you write?
Oh, where do I write?
It sounds like I've never asked you, like, actually when you write the book, like, where do you write?
I'm a bit of a baby about writing. Like, I have, my sort of magical thinking stuff. I write at home in my office, almost uniquely. And then sometimes, like over the summer, my daughter was in a little sports camp at our health club, and there's a really nice cafe by the pool. And I wrote a lot of the second book by the pool at the health club, which is something I've never been able to do before. It's like write in a different place. And something about like because they're swimming in this pool in the second book a lot. And so mostly I write at home. If I had my choice, I would just stay home all day and write, but you have to do other stuff. So I write either there or, at the health club.
Do you set like a time limit? Do you where do you?
It's funny, I do write other novels, under a different name, but this is so much fun to write that I have less rules about how it has to go. So I try to write as early as possible, because if I wait till the end of the day, it feels more like work. But if I sort of get seated down by 9:30, I can go from 9:30 till 2. This is fun. It's really fun to write. So it doesn't feel like you're like bleeding over the keys, which a lot of writers say. It feels like, and we write these great outlines. I'm like, oh, this is the great adventure scene today, or this is like the scene where Prisha's parents say something horrible to her. So.
Sweet girl, I never thought that.
So one more question, just going back to the teachers conversation. Are you getting feedback from teachers? And if so, what are they saying?
Only feedback I've gotten from my teacher so far is my teacher at Lower Marion High School, who was the one that taught me how to write and taught a speaking arts class and all that sort of stuff. And she enjoys them, so that's the one I've gotten like direct message to me,
Oh, that's cool.
You got your parents.
I got my parents who are, they gave great feedback. They've been excited about this project since the beginning, because they, know that I love writing and sports and classics. So it was like pretty, I was excited that they got it. They're like, oh, this must be from when you read the Iliad, like this passage. I was like, yes. Maybe other people, I think classics are such an important part of, writing too, just having some understanding. And we were creating our own classics. We created our own gods or mythology.
Yeah, create our own mythology. We had to in this circumstance, with the gods of emotion, all sorts of stuff. We had to create our own kind of mythology to it.
So there'll be a book on
it's
that.
A whole other thing. Yeah. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, a few years down the road.
Stay tuned for that.
We've got to finish this first.
So we have a couple of people asking, what's your favorite book?
That's tough, man, because it's like, it's hard because I'm, sitting around, I can remember where each idea was conceived, you know what I mean? Like actually come up with, and it's tough. I will say this one was the first, it was like the idea that launched everything. It was the first character, it was the first idea for a story, and so I think that carries a certain specialness to it because it's the first one.
Or do they mean your favorite book, like your favorite book to read? Like not our books. Which these are your favorite books in the whole world in general, right?
Like,
yeah, that's what I was. Well, if we're talking in general, I mean,
these are the best books.
Not to be biased or anything, but I love our books because we're doing something new. I haven't seen a sports fantasy book that's a sports fantasy book, period.
Neither have I.
But in general, I mean, I kind of go all over the place.
Yeah, it's a dangerous question to answer because like you have different books that you like for different reasons on different days, and there's not one book that satisfies all of the things.
That's impossible. It just depends. Like there's certain leadership books that are awesome. There's certain fantasy adventure books that are awesome, sci-fi. So I kind of bounce around.
So we have 5 minutes left.
Oh.
Oh. Yeah, I could sign some more.
Yeah, I decided some more. And so there's another character in the book we haven't talked about who's sort of my favorite character.
Oh, Vera.
Vera is really a cool character to write because she doesn't have a point of view because it toggles between Rovi and Prisha. Yeah. But Vera is sort of sports at its purest, right?
Yeah, Vera is extremely competitive.
Which is a great thing, especially for a young woman.
Yes, and it's a great arc to have, her development as an athlete and as a person in the story. And balancing them out between like Prisha, Vera, and Rovi, the balance between those three is, they have a good connection.
She's the one who really is the biggest manifestation of what you were saying at the beginning about the basket getting bigger and smaller, or the net getting higher or lower when you get angry, because she's the one who has to really marshal her emotions because she pushes herself so hard and then things get harder for her. And so she's really where all the ideas of the book come together for me.
Yeah, she's a perfectionist in every sense of the word. And then there's Castor, and Castor is
poor Castor.
He's every bit as charming as his name would suggest.
Poor Castor. Every book needs a villain.
Every book needs a villain.
But he's not the worst villain.
He is not. He is not.
Can we do a couple more questions?
Sure.
Are the characters based on people you know or have encountered?
Well, I have to say, sometimes some of the elements are taken from, I played sports growing up and as an adult. So moments like that, someone behaving badly, yeah, for sure, but not a specific person.
Like dialogue.
Yeah,
dialogue. Like when you're writing dialogue, like some of the dialogue, I'm like, whoa, that was good.
But no, they're not based on real people at all, no. As we said earlier, every character sort of, you put yourself into it.
Right.
So everyone has a little bit more of us in it than some random people.
Right.
But, there's some kids in the school who aren't the nicest or just are a little bit, snappish behind the scenes. And that's sort of, we both experienced this growing up, people who aren't generous.
You see them around a lot in youth sports. Different personalities, different coaching styles, different personalities of children themselves. Some are just perfectionists like Vera, too hard on themselves. Other ones are the opposite. Other ones don't want to try really because they're afraid to fail. There's a lot of different things, elements, kind of the essence of them, and then you put them into the stories. But yeah.
So I just wanted to thank you and thank you guys all for tuning in to hear about Epoca, the Tree of Ecrof, and it's on sale November 12th everywhere.
That's right. That's right. Go get it. Go get it. And we'll welcome you to the world of Granity.